A millionaire's silent daughter asterisk. A millionaire didn't know what else to do to break his daughter's silence asterisk. Then a poor girl appeared like a true miracle and changed everything in just a few days asterisk. His daughter, previously mute, smiled. And that smile changed everything. Asterisk. What seemed like a divine miracle became a chance to rebuild an entire family asterisk. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll hear in your life. The Mitchell Mansion in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood was as spacious as it was empty. The extensive corridors, decorated with expensive works of art, echoed only with the footsteps of the homeowner, Richard Mitchell, a successful businessman in the real estate industry. At 45, he commanded one of the largest construction companies in the country, but his face rarely showed any sign of satisfaction. His days were filled with meetings, contracts, and a mechanical routine that served as a shield against the emotions he struggled to keep buried asterisk. In the upstairs bedroom, his 8-year-old daughter Bethany sat silently before a sheet of paper, drawing with precise strokes for a child her age. For almost a year, Bethany hadn't uttered a single word. The best specialists in Chicago had already tried everything: psychologists, psychiatrists, speech therapists, but the girl remained in her world of silence, communicating only through drawings that portrayed distant landscapes, places where perhaps her mind found refuge asterisk. Richard observed his daughter from the doorway, feeling completely powerless. How could he help her when he himself could barely breathe under the weight of Claire's absence, his wife? She had departed suddenly, leaving him with a company to run and a daughter to raise. The doctors explained it was a rare heart condition, silent until the fatal moment. One day Claire was there, smiling, planning a family trip. The next, only silence remained. "It's dinner time, Bethany," he said, trying to smile. The girl didn't respond, nor did she lift her eyes from the paper. Richard sighed and approached, crouching beside her. "What are you drawing today?" Asterisk Bethany turned the drawing toward him. It was a dark-haired girl with large eyes standing in front of what appeared to be their mansion. Richard frowned, intrigued. "Who is that?" Asterisk Bethany simply pointed to the window, which made no sense to him. Resigned, Richard took her by the hand and led her to the dining room, where Mrs. Zelda, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for more than 20 years, was serving dinner. "She drew another child today," commented Richard, while helping Bethany to sit asterisk. Mrs. Zelda, a woman with graying hair and a stern expression, but kind eyes, observed the girl attentively. "Maybe it's a sign, sir, that she's ready to have some company besides us." Asterisk Richard shook his head negatively. "We've tried. Remember the last time I invited my partner's children? She hid in the closet and didn't come out for hours." Asterisk dinner proceeded in silence, as every night. Afterward, Richard retired to his office to review some contracts, while Bethany was taken for her bath by Mrs. Zelda. It was a routine that functioned mechanically, without surprises or joys asterisk. It was around 9 o'clock when a noise from the kitchen interrupted Richard's concentration. Thinking it might be Mrs. Zelda preparing the tea she always drank before bed, he ignored it. But a few minutes later, he heard the frightened voice of the housekeeper calling his name. "Mr. Richard, come quickly!" asterisk. He ran to the kitchen, finding a scene he would never have expected. Mrs. Zelda was standing by the back door, firmly holding the arm of a girl approximately 9 years old. Her dark hair was disheveled, her simple clothes were a bit dirty, and her large, expressive eyes stared at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I found this girl inside the pantry," explained Mrs. Zelda, visibly disturbed. "She was eating cookies from the jar." Asterisk Richard looked at the small intruder, not knowing how to react. "How did you get in here?" Asterisk. The girl maintained her silence, but her eyes scanned the kitchen as if assessing escape routes. Richard noticed dirt stains on her thin arms and a small, improvised bandage on her knee. "We'll call the police," decided Richard, heading to the phone. "No!" The girl's voice sounded loud and clear, surprising them. "Please don't call anyone. I just wanted food. I promise I'll leave." Asterisk Richard stopped, studying her more carefully. What's your name? Where are your parents? My name is Sophie, she replied hesitantly. I don't have parents. I ran away from the shelter. The social workers were taking me somewhere else, far from here, but I escaped. I don't want to go. Asterisk Mrs. Zelda exchanged a meaningful look with Richard. Both knew the protocol would be to notify the authorities. However, there was something about this girl's determination that caused a strange hesitation. Are you hurt? Asked Richard, noticing that she was favoring one leg. It's nothing, Sophie replied quickly. I just scratched it when I jumped over the back wall. Asterisk. At that moment, a movement at the kitchen door caught everyone's attention. Bethany was there, watching the scene with wide eyes. To Richard's astonishment, she took a few steps into the kitchen, approaching Sophie with curiosity. Asterisk. What happened next was almost surreal. Sophie smiled at Bethany, a genuine smile that lit up her dirty face. Hi, she said simply. Asterisk. And Bethany, who hadn't spoken for almost a year, moved her lips silently in an attempt to respond to the greeting. She didn't make a sound, but it was the first social reaction she had shown in a long time. Asterisk Richard and Mrs. Zelda exchanged astonished looks. The housekeeper was the first to react. The girl needs a bath and clean clothes. Then we'll decide what to do. Asterisk. Mrs. Zelda, we can't simply... Asterisk. Mr. Richard, interrupted the housekeeper with unusual firmness. Look at your daughter. Asterisk Richard observed Bethany, who continued staring at Sophie with an interest she hadn't shown in anything for months. Something was happening there, something he didn't fully understand. One night, he finally decided. She can stay one night. Tomorrow, we'll resolve this properly. Asterisk while Mrs. Zelda took the two girls upstairs, Richard remained in the kitchen, feeling that something important had just changed in his life. He couldn't explain it, but there was a strange sensation in the air, as if Claire, somehow, was guiding. These events. Asterisk. In the guest room, Sophie received clean clothes and, after a warm bath, looked like a different person. Her dark hair framed a delicate face, and her expressive eyes demonstrated a maturity beyond her years. Thank you, she said to Mrs. Zelda, who was preparing the bed for her to sleep. Asterisk. The housekeeper studied the girl carefully. There's something familiar about you, she commented, but shook her head, dismissing the thought. Tomorrow we'll talk more. Asterisk. When Mrs. Zelda left, Sophie found Bethany standing at the door of the room, watching her. Without words, Richard's daughter entered, sat on the bed, and offered Sophie the drawing she had made earlier. Asterisk. It was a drawing of Sophie in front of the mansion, as if Bethany had known she would come. How did you know? Asked Sophie, amazed. Asterisk. Bethany just smiled, her first genuine smile in a long time, and the two girls sat side by side, in a silent understanding that transcended words. Asterisk. The next morning, Richard awoke earlier than usual. The presence of the unknown girl in his house had left him restless all night. Between the moral responsibility of returning her to the authorities and Bethany's surprising reaction, he found himself in a dilemma he never imagined facing. Asterisk. He descended the stairs silently and was surprised to find Mrs. Zelda in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with unusual energy for that hour. Is the girl still sleeping? Asked Richard, serving himself coffee. Both of them are, answered Mrs. Zelda, beating pancake batter. I checked on them a little while ago. They're in Bethany's room sleeping together. Your daughter finally managed to rest a whole night without nightmares, sir. Asterisk. Richard frowned. What do you mean? Wasn't Bethany in the guest room? No, sir. When I went to check before going to bed, I found the guest room bed empty. Sophie was in Bethany's room. They both fell asleep drawing. There were papers scattered all over. Asterisk. The news was surprising. Bethany never let anyone enter her room, not even the nannies specially hired to take care of her. It was her sanctuary, her safe space since Claire had left. I'll call Child Protective Services as soon as the office opens, said Richard, though his voice betrayed the hesitation he felt. Asterisk. Mrs. Zelda stopped what she was doing and faced him with unusual intensity. "Mr. Richard, may I speak frankly?" Asterisk. He nodded, noting the seriousness in the housekeeper's face. "There's something about this girl, something that has troubled me since I saw her yesterday." She paused, as if carefully choosing her next words. "She reminds me of someone." "Who?" "Miss Clare, when she was young." Asterisk Richard felt a shiver run down his spine. It was true that there was something vaguely familiar in Sophie's features, but he had attributed this to fatigue and the emotion of the moment. "Mrs. Zelda, that doesn't make sense. Claire didn't have any relatives. She grew up in an orphanage. You know that." Asterisk. The housekeeper sighed deeply. "Sir, there are things about Miss Clare that you don't know, things she asked me to keep secret." Richard's heart accelerated. "What things?" Asterisk. Before Mrs. Zelda could answer, they were interrupted, though by laughter coming from the stairs. Both turned, astonished, to see Sophie coming down hand in hand with Bethany. Richard's daughter, who had lived in a world of absolute silence for almost a year, was laughing. "Good morning," said Sophie timidly when she saw the adults. Asterisk Richard couldn't take his eyes off his daughter, who was smiling at her new friend. "Good morning," he replied automatically, still in shock. Asterisk. The girls sat at the table and Mrs. Zelda, disguising her emotion, served pancakes to both. Sophie ate with appetite, while Bethany, for the first time in months, didn't need to be encouraged to eat. "You drew quite a lot last night," commented Richard, trying to sound casual. Asterisk. Sophie nodded, enthusiastic. "Bethany draws very well. She showed me all the places she wants to take me. The park, the library, the back garden." "She talked to you?" asked Richard, unable to hide his surprise. "Not with words," explained Sophie, looking at Bethany with affection. "But I understand what she wants to say. It's as if we've known each other for a long time." Asterisk. During breakfast, Richard observed in wonder how the two interacted. Bethany, though still not speaking, seemed completely at ease with Sophie, communicating through gestures, expressions, and occasionally quick drawings made on napkins. Asterisk. When the girls finished and asked to go play in the garden, Richard didn't have the heart to refuse. As soon as they left, he turned to Mrs. Zelda. "What were you going to tell me about Claire?" Asterisk. The housekeeper took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Sir, before I speak, I need you to understand that Miss Claire had her reasons. She carried an enormous weight." Asterisk. "Mrs. Zelda, please, be direct. Sophie is not Miss Claire's first daughter," she finally revealed, her voice almost a whisper. "There was another before Bethany." Asterisk. Richard felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "What? That's impossible. I met Claire in college. We've been together since then. She never had another—" "It was before you," interrupted Mrs. Zelda. "When Miss Claire was only 17, she became pregnant by an influential young man, son of an important politician. His family pressured her to give up the child for adoption as soon as it was born." Asterisk. Richard fell seated in the nearest chair, trying to process the information. "Claire never told me this. She was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what that man's family might do. They threatened her, said they would destroy any chance of a future she might have if she didn't cooperate. And the child. What happened? I was the one who helped Miss Claire during those difficult months. She stayed hidden at my sister's house in the countryside. When the girl was born, I myself took her to a family my sister knew. Simple people, but good-hearted." "And you think Sophie is—" "I'm not sure," admitted Mrs. Zelda. "But the age matches, and there's something in her eyes, in her manner. It's like seeing Miss Claire again." Asterisk. Richard passed his hands over his face, trying to organize his thoughts. "This is crazy, Mrs. Zelda. Even if this remote possibility exists, how could we be certain? And how do we explain the fact that she appeared precisely at our house?" "Maybe it's not a coincidence," suggested the housekeeper. "Miss Claire left a letter, kept with her most intimate belongings. She asked me to give it to you if something like this happened." "A letter? And you never told me anything?" "She made me promise. She said there were secrets she couldn't reveal, in life, but that one day perhaps it would be necessary for you to know. Asterisk. At that moment the phone rang, breaking the tension of the moment. It was Marcus, Richard's lawyer and longtime friend, returning a call from the previous night. Richard had left an urgent message, without going into details about the situation. "Marcus, I need your help," said Richard as soon as he answered. "We have a complicated situation here at home. A girl appeared yesterday, says she ran away from a shelter, and Mrs. Zelda just told me a story that seems like fiction, but that might explain a lot." "I'm on my way," replied the lawyer, perceiving the gravity in his friend's voice. "Don't do anything until I arrive." Asterisk. While waiting, Richard went to the garden to observe the girls. Bethany and Sophie were playing hide-and-seek among the trees, and the scene was so ordinary and at the same time so extraordinary that he felt tears in his eyes. His daughter, who for so long had existed only as a silent shadow through the house, now ran and smiled like any child her age. Asterisk. Mrs. Zelda approached, holding a small carved wooden box. "I found it among Miss Clare's belongings. The letter is inside along with other documents." Asterisk. Richard took the box with trembling hands. He recognized it immediately. It was the jewelry box he had given Claire on their first wedding anniversary. She always kept it locked and stored in her closet. Asterisk. Upon opening the box, he found a sealed envelope with his name written in Claire's elegant handwriting. Alongside was a golden heart-shaped locket and a birth certificate yellowed by time. The child's name was Sophie Helena Mitchell, born exactly 9 years ago in rural Illinois. Where the father's name should be, there was only a blank space. Asterisk. With his heart racing, Richard opened the envelope and began to read. As he progressed through the lines written by Claire, his world, already fragile from loss, crumbled and rebuilt itself simultaneously, revealing a truth he could never have imagined. Asterisk. Claire, S. Letter was a painful confession that Richard read with a heavy heart. Each word seemed to echo her voice, momentarily bringing her back to that room. My beloved Richard, if you are reading this letter, it means our daughter has found her way back home, and that I am no longer there to explain personally the greatest pain and the greatest regret of my life. Asterisk. Before I met you when I was only 17, I fell desperately in love with Augustus Warren, son of one of Chicago's most influential politicians. It was an intense love, but forbidden by his family. When I became pregnant, his family offered me money to solve the problem. I refused. Then came the threats. Augustus was about to assume the presidency of his father's companies, and a scandal of this nature would destroy his reputation. Asterisk. Was forced to spend my pregnancy in hiding, with the help of Zelda, who was like a mother to me since I lost my parents. When Sophie was born, they told me it would be better for everyone if I gave her up for adoption. They said she would have a better life, that I could follow my path, that one day when I was ready, I could have other children. Asterisk. I lied to you all. These years, Richard, and this lie corroded my soul day after day. I always thought about looking for her, but I feared the consequences. The Warren family made it clear that if I tried to make contact, they would destroy not only me, but anyone who stood by my side. Asterisk. If Sophie has found you, it was because destiny wanted it that way. I ask that you protect her, that you love her, as I know you already love Bethany. They are sisters, Richard, even if only through their mother. And if Augustus discovers this, he will try to take her from you, not out of love, but to protect his name, his political career, his empire. Asterisk. At the bottom of this box are proofs, threatening letters, recordings, documents that prove everything I've related. Use them only if absolutely necessary. Not for vengeance, but to protect our daughter. Asterisk. Forgive me for not having the courage to tell you before. Fear paralyzed me, and when I finally found strength, fate did not give me time. Asterisk. With all my love and regret. Claire. Richard let the letter fall onto the table, silent tears streaming down his face. The pain of betrayal mixed with compassion for the suffering Claire had carried alone for so many years. Asterisk. Mrs. Zelda, who remained silent, finally spoke. She suffered greatly, sir. Every day she thought about the girl. When she discovered she was sick, she talked about looking for her but didn't have time. Asterisk. The doorbell rang, announcing Marcus's arrival. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a serious and compassionate expression, listened attentively while Richard related the events of the last 24 hours. "This is extremely delicate, Richard," commented Marcus after reading the letter. "If Sophie really is Claire's daughter, and consequently Bethany's sister, we have a basis to initiate an adoption process. But if Augustus Warren is indeed the biological father and decides to claim his rights, we'll have a difficult battle ahead." "What do you suggest we do?" asked Richard, looking through the window where the girls were still playing, oblivious to the storm that was forming. "First, we need to confirm if Sophie really is who we think. A DNA test comparing her. Genetic material with Bethany's would resolve this question. If they're half-sisters, we'll have our answer. And then, we initiate the legal process. I'll prepare a petition for temporary custody while the adoption process proceeds. We have Claire's letter. We have the fact that the girl apparently ran away from a shelter, which suggests that the original adoption wasn't successful, and we have the evident bond between the sisters." Asterisk. Marcus paused, adjusting his glasses. "But Richard, we need to be realistic. If Augustus Warren enters this story, he has the resources to make this very complicated. We're talking about someone who practically controls half the state." "I don't care," replied Richard firmly. "You saw what happened to Bethany in just one day. Sophie brought my daughter back. I won't allow them to be separated." Asterisk. At that moment, Mrs. Zelda entered the room hurriedly. "Mr. Richard, there's a man at the gate. He says he's a social worker, wants to talk about a missing girl." Asterisk. Richard and Marcus exchanged concerned looks. "Let him in," decided Richard. "Better to face this now." Asterisk. The man who entered minutes later didn't have the appearance of a social worker. He wore an expensive suit and displayed an intimidating posture. He introduced himself as Paul Griffith, representative of Child Protective Services. "We're looking for a minor named Sophie, who ran away from the Oakwood Haven shelter yesterday afternoon. We have information that she might be in this residence." "And how did you obtain this information, Mr. Griffith?" asked Marcus, immediately assuming a defensive posture. "We have our methods," the man responded evasively. "The important thing is that the girl needs to return to the shelter immediately. She's under state custody." "May I see your official identification?" requested Marcus. Asterisk. The man hesitated for an instant before presenting a document that, even to an untrained eye, seemed suspicious. Marcus examined it carefully, noting inconsistencies. "Interesting," commented the lawyer, "because I just spoke with the director of Oakwood Haven, and she informed me that no girl has run away from the shelter in the last few days, and that there certainly isn't any Paul Griffith authorized to represent them." Asterisk. It was a lie, of course. Marcus hadn't made such a call, but the bluff worked. The supposed social worker visibly changed his posture, his face hardening. "Look, let's simplify. I know the girl is here and my client has a particular interest in this case. We can resolve this discreetly, with good financial compensation, or we can make things unpleasant." "Your client?" Richard stepped forward, anger growing inside him. "I'm curious to know who that would be." Asterisk. The man smiled humorlessly. "Someone you wouldn't want to have as an enemy, Mr. Mitchell. Someone who can make your life and your business very complicated." "I think our conversation is over," intervened Marcus, positioning himself between Richard and the visitor. "I suggest you inform your client, whoever it may be, that any attempt at intimidation will be met with appropriate legal measures." "You don't know who you're messing with," threatened the man as he was led to the door. Asterisk. As soon as the visitor left, Richard collapsed in the nearest armchair. "It's Warren. It has to be him, but how did he know so quickly? He probably has people monitoring the shelter," theorized Marcus. "If he kept Sophie under surveillance all these years, he would know immediately when she disappeared." "We need to act quickly," decided Richard. "I won't lose Sophie as Claire lost her. I won't allow Warren to use her as a pawn in his power games." Asterisk. While they discussed the next steps, A scream from the garden interrupted the conversation. Richard ran to the window in time to see a man trying to jump over the back wall. Sophie and Bethany were running toward the house, the older girl protecting the younger one. Without hesitation, Richard and Marcus ran to the garden. The intruder, upon seeing them, gave up and disappeared over the other side of the wall. The girls, frightened, threw themselves into Richard's arms. "He took a picture of us," said Sophie, trembling. "He said he would come to get me soon." That night, the Mitchell mansion transformed into a fortress. Richard activated the security system, hired 2 additional security guards, and transferred the girls to the master bedroom, where they could sleep under his vigilance. "I won't let anyone take you," he promised Sophie while tucking the covers around her and Bethany. "He'll come back," murmured Sophie, her large eyes reflecting the fear she felt. "He always comes back." "Who, Sophie? Who is this man?" The girl hesitated as if afraid to speak. "The man who says he's my father. He appears now and then at the shelter, brings presents, makes promises, but never takes me with him. He says it's not the right moment, that he has issues to resolve. First," her eyes filled with tears, "he never really wanted me." Richard felt his heart tighten. "And your adoptive family? Mrs. Zelda mentioned you were adopted as a baby." Sophie lowered her eyes. "They were good to me, but there was an accident when I was 6 years old. The house caught fire while we were sleeping." Her voice faltered. "Only I managed to get out. After that I went to the shelter." Richard embraced the girl, feeling immense anger toward Augustus Warren. The man probably knew all about this and never lifted a finger to help his own daughter. He kept her under surveillance, visited her occasionally, but allowed her to grow up in a shelter, alone and without love. "Now you have a family, Sophie," he whispered. "Me, Bethany, Mrs. Zelda. We'll take care of you and nobody will separate us." When the girls finally fell asleep, Richard returned to the room where Marcus was still working, preparing documents and legal strategies for what lay ahead. "I secured an emergency hearing with Judge Mendez for early tomorrow," informed the lawyer. "We'll request temporary custody based on the evident abandonment and the family bond with Bethany." "And if Warren shows up?" "He will show up," replied Marcus somberly. "The question is how much he's willing to expose to get what he wants. The documents Claire left might be our only protection." The next morning, as Richard prepared to leave with Marcus, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was grave and authoritative. "Mitchell, this is Augustus Warren. I believe we have an important matter to discuss." Richard felt his blood freeze in his veins upon hearing Augustus Warren's voice on the other end of the line. This man, who was now just a name and a voice, had already caused so much suffering to Claire and now threatened to repeat history with Sophie. "We have nothing to discuss, Warren," replied Richard, keeping his voice firm. "Sophie is under my protection now. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mitchell." The voice sounded dangerously calm. "That girl is my daughter. I have legal rights over her." "Rights? What rights? The same ones you exercised when you abandoned her in a shelter for years, or perhaps when you forced Claire to give her up?" There was a momentary silence on the other end. "Claire told you." It wasn't a question, but a bitter realization. "Claire left a letter, Warren. And much more than that. She left proof of the threats, the coercion, everything that you and your family did." "Bluff," challenged Warren, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. "Claire wouldn't be so imprudent." "Imprudent was what you did to her, to Sophie, a girl who grew up without the love of her parents because you were more concerned with your political career and your public image." "It's not that simple, Mitchell. I was young. My father controlled everything. When I finally had the conditions to do something for Sophie, the adoptive family had suffered that accident. I tried to obtain custody, but the system is bureaucratic. I was working on it when she ran away." Richard gave a humorless laugh. "Strange. Sophie told me about a man who occasionally appeared at the shelter, brought presents, made empty promises, but never took her home. That was you, wasn't it?" The silence on the other end confirmed his suspicion. "What do you really want, Warren? Because I'm sure it's not to be a father. You had 9 years for that." Asterisk. After a tense moment, Warren spoke again. "I'll be direct. I'm about to announce my candidacy for governor. A scandal involving an illegitimate daughter would be disastrous. I'm willing to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" asked Richard, signaling for Marcus, who was following the conversation, to take notes. "I can relinquish custody legally, as long as you guarantee absolute discretion. I can also contribute financially to her future." "You really think everything comes down to money, don't you, Warren? Sophie is not a commercial transaction. She's a child who needs love, stability, family." "Exactly what I'm offering her, Mitchell. A chance to have all that with you and your daughter, without interference from me. It's a situation where everyone wins." Asterisk Richard breathed deeply, containing his indignation. "Let's meet. You, me, and our lawyers. But know one thing. I'm not negotiating for myself. I'm doing this for Sophie and for Claire, who is no longer here to protect the daughter you forced her to abandon." Asterisk Marcus nodded in approval as Richard scheduled the meeting for that afternoon at his law office. "You were brilliant," commented the lawyer when the call ended. "You managed to keep him on the defensive, and on top of that, you got him to propose giving up custody." "He doesn't want Sophie," said Richard, still trembling with anger. "He never did. He's only concerned with the scandal, with his precious career, which is good for us. Men like Warren place their public image above everything. He'll cooperate as long as we guarantee his reputation remains intact." Asterisk. While the men discussed strategies, Mrs. Zelda prepared the girls for breakfast. Bethany, who had been showing surprising progress since Sophie's arrival, surprised everyone that morning. "Says Sophie," she said softly, pronouncing her sister's name with visible effort, but also with determination. Asterisk. The entire kitchen fell silent. Sophie, who was helping to set the table, dropped the spoon she was holding. Mrs. Zelda brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes watering. "You spoke!" exclaimed Sophie, running to embrace her sister. "You said my name?" Asterisk Bethany smiled, tears streaming down her angelic face. "Sophie," she repeated, this time with more firmness. "My sister." Asterisk Richard entered the kitchen at that moment, alarmed by the noise. "What happened?" Asterisk. "Mr. Richard said." Mrs. Zelda, her voice choked with emotion. Bethany spoke. She called Sophie her sister. Asterisk. It was as if time stopped. Richard approached his daughter slowly, kneeling before her. "Bethany? Sweetie?" "Daddy," she replied, her voice still small and hesitant, but clear enough to be heard. "Don't let her go away, please." Asterisk Richard embraced the two girls tightly, tears now flowing freely. "Never," he promised. "I'll never let you be separated." Asterisk. That small word, Daddy, pronounced by the voice he feared he would never hear, again gave Richard the strength he needed to face what lay ahead. It was no longer just a matter of doing what was right or honoring Claire's memory. It was about his family, a family that was finally healing, finding itself, becoming complete. Asterisk. The meeting with Augustus Warren was set for 3 in the afternoon at Marcus's office. Richard arrived early, bringing with him the box with the documents left by Claire. While they waited, Marcus reviewed the strategy. "Let's take it easy. Let him speak first, reveal his cards. The fact that he suggested giving up custody already gives us an advantage. Our goal is to formalize this legally in a way that he can't go back on in the future." Asterisk. Promptly at 3, Augustus Warren entered the office. He was a tall man, of elegant bearing, with grey hair at his temples that gave him an air of distinction. He was accompanied by a severe-looking lawyer who carried a black leather portfolio. "Mitchell," greeted Warren with a nod. "This is Dr. Rivers, my lawyer." Asterisk. The introductions were brief and tense. When everyone was seated, Warren went straight to the point. "As I mentioned on the phone, I'm willing to officially relinquish custody of Sophie. In exchange, I demand absolute discretion about my relationship with her." Asterisk Richard observed the man carefully. There was something familiar in Warren's features. The same expressive eyes as Sophie, the same shape of face. The resemblance was undeniable. Why the sudden interest in discretion, Warren? For 9 years you kept Sophie close, but never publicly acknowledged her. What changed? My position changed, replied Warren coldly. I'm about to launch my candidacy for governor. A scandal of this nature would be harmful. Harmful to whom? To you or to Sophie, provoked Richard. Because I'm certain she's suffered enough being treated like a shameful secret. Warren's lawyer intervened. We're here to negotiate, not to discuss the past. My client is offering a solution that benefits everyone, especially the minor in question. Asterisk Marcus opened his portfolio, removing some documents. Our terms are as follows. Mr. Warren will formally relinquish all parental rights over Sophie. In return, Mr. Mitchell will initiate the legal adoption process. There will be no public mention of the biological relationship between Mr. Warren and Sophie unless she herself, upon reaching adulthood, wishes to know the truth. This is acceptable, agreed Warren. I'm also willing to establish a trust fund to guarantee Sophie's educational future. A noble gesture, commented Richard with irony, but unnecessary. Sophie will have everything she needs with me. I insist, said Warren. It's not a question of necessity, but of responsibility. Responsibility? Richard couldn't contain his indignation. Where was your responsibility when Claire needed to face everything alone, or when Sophie lost her adoptive family and ended up in a shelter? Money doesn't erase that, Warren. Asterisk. The politician's countenance hardened. You don't know anything about the circumstances, Mitchell. My father controlled everything at that time. It was he who threatened Claire, who orchestrated the entire situation. When I finally managed to free myself from his influence, it was already too late. It's never too late to do what's right, countered Richard. Claire tried until the end. She left this letter, this evidence, to protect Sophie from you and your family. Let me see that letter, demanded Warren, extending his hand. That's not part of the negotiation, intervened Marcus. The letter was left for Mr. Mitchell, not for you. Asterisk. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, after consulting with his lawyer in a low voice, Warren agreed to the proposed terms. The documents were signed right there, with the promise that the formal process would be initiated the next day. Asterisk. When everything was ready, Warren made one last request. I'd like to see her. One last time. Asterisk. Richard hesitated. Part of him wanted to deny this request, to protect Sophie from one more encounter with the man who had abandoned her. But another part understood that this closure could be important for everyone. Tomorrow, decided Richard, at my house with Marcus present and the child psychologist who's been accompanying the girls. And it will be brief. Asterisk. Warren nodded, suddenly looking older and more tired. Thank you. Despite what you think of me, Mitchell, I do care about her. I always have. Caring isn't enough, Warren. Loving, protecting, being present, that's what a father should do. Asterisk. When Warren and his lawyer left, Richard collapsed in the chair, emotionally exhausted. Did we do the right thing? Absolutely, confirmed Marcus. Sophie will be legally protected, and Warren won't be able to change his mind in the future, even if his political situation changes. Asterisk. The next morning, the Mitchell mansion was silent and tense. Bethany, who now spoke a few words each day, was especially quiet, as if she sensed the gravity of the moment. Sophie, informed about the visit, showed surprising maturity for her age. Will he take me away? She asked Richard while they waited in the living room. No, sweetheart, never. He came only to say goodbye. After this, if you want, one day when you're older, you can choose if you want to know him better. But that decision will always be yours. Asterisk. The girl nodded, squeezing Bethany's hand, who wouldn't leave her side. Can I stay forever with you? Then be a real part of the family. You already are family, Sophie, for real and forever. Asterisk. The meeting was brief and contained. Augustus Warren maintained a respectful distance, limiting himself to wishing the best for Sophie and giving her a small jewelry box. It was my mother's, he explained. I thought you should have it. Asterisk. Sophie accepted the gift with a polite thank you, but without showing emotion. For her, this man was just a stranger who occasionally appeared in her life. When Warren departed, he took with him not only the weight of his past choices, but also the certainty that Sophie would be in good hands, hands that truly loved her. Not just as a biological obligation, but as a daily choice of love and commitment. In the weeks that followed, life in the Mitchell mansion completely transformed. Sophie's adoption process advanced, and Bethany made impressive progress with speech, now saying complete sentences, though still with some hesitation. The house, previously a mausoleum of painful memories, now overflowed with life. Laughter echoed through the corridors, colorful drawings decorated the walls, and even Richard seemed rejuvenated, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. On a sunny spring afternoon while the girls played in the garden. Under Mrs. Zelda's watchful eye, Richard retired to his office and opened Claire's box again. Among the documents and the letter, he found a small diary he hadn't noticed before. On the last page, dated a few weeks before her passing, Claire had written, "True family is the one you have the courage to protect even when the whole world says it's not yours." Richard closed the diary, tears in his eyes but a smile on his lips. Claire was right. Family wasn't just a matter of blood or documents, it was a daily choice of love, protection, and commitment. That night during dinner, something extraordinary happened. Bethany, who still struggled with words, suddenly rose from her chair and said with surprising clarity, "Thank you, Daddy, for bringing Sophie home, for making us a family again." Richard, too emotional to respond, simply embraced. His two daughters, feeling that he was finally complete. The silence that had for so long dominated that house had been replaced by voices, laughter, and love. The love that Claire had always known they would find, even when everything seemed lost. And so, as the sun set on the Chicago horizon, illuminating the Mitchell mansion with a golden glow, a new family celebrated not just what they had found, but also what they had built together. A home where love transcended blood, where bonds were forged not by obligation, but by choice, and where silence had finally given way to the music of shared life. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Richard, Bethany, and Sophie has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally moving stories. Find it here on the left side of the video. If you enjoyed this narrative about true family bonds, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human feelings. Don't miss our upcoming